Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Mark Hayton, and today I'm going to talk to you about the role of people analytics when onboarding a CEO. I'll start with a little bit about myself. I'm the global lead for organization development at Nokia. What that means is I focus on roughly three areas. I focus on measuring and understanding the employee experience, trying to translate that experience to our leaders, and then helping our organization prioritize the areas that they want to move forward. The second thing that I focus on is coordinating a survey network across the company, something which we'll come to a little bit later. And the third thing that I do is I try to help people with their analytical methods, understanding how to look at specific problems, how to define metrics, how to organize and coordinate their reporting, and how to work together across teams to truly understand what's interdependent, what's effective, and what's significant in changing the employee experience and indeed the productivity of our colleagues in Nokia. A quick note, which is that if you like some of the things that I'll discuss here today, I'll be going through them in more detail on Thursday in a specific section, which is focused on building a people analytics function. It's a masterclass where we go into details like closing the gender pay gap, on setting up your department, understanding your capabilities, assessing new project opportunities, and building a network of people around your company to help enable people analytics in its fullest. I'm currently working for Nokia, so a little word on Nokia. It may not be the phone-making corporation you're familiar with. Today, we're about 90,000 employees. We do about 22 billion euros in revenue worldwide. We are the number one in software telco, number two in global telecom infrastructure. We are fundamentally the enablers who set up the networks that allows things like 5G and connected devices to talk to each other across the airwaves. We're active all over the world. We have our headquarters and base predominantly in Europe, but we have a significant presence in Middle East and Africa, China, and the Greater Pacific. And we've made some good gains in our American markets in recent years. And I think something else to consider is that Nokia is now the first, currently only, company that's going to build a cell network on the moon. Today, I'm going to take you through three things. I'm going to take you through the foundation of people analytics, so how we put ourselves in a position to actually onboard a new CEO or help onboard a new CEO. We're going to break down the requirement as the new CEO came in, and then we're going to talk about enabling change and transformation and where we are today. So first, those foundations. The way that I think many people or many companies kind of evolve into analytics through kind of a reporting plus model. But at Nokia, we've always seen analytics as kind of a combination of these three elements of computer science, maths and statistics, and subject matter expertise. If you think about where most organizations usually start, it's somewhere around here. It's around augmenting the data and the constructs inside our core systems. But my own particular background is actually from more kind of social research. So my expertise is behavioral and microeconomics, although I do have a pretty good background in statistics. And I also understand a little bit about social research, about how you construct programs to understand general opinions in populations, and then also shifting preferences and experiences over time. There are, of course, other options. So some HRs develop their people analytics through policy adherence and governance. So they try to understand to what extent they're compliant, and they use analytics to help bolster that. And others have a kind of a beginning in a consultancy background. So they tend to use analytics solutions to help solve problems for the business themselves. Where we are today is actually currently in a kind of hybrid model between all of these areas. We are in the business, as I say, of building unicorns, of combining these three specific areas to deliver real value. And each of them are equally important. And as I go through the presentation, you'll see I'll try to highlight the areas where computer science, statistics, and subject matter expertise really come in handy in the delivery. What we want to do fundamentally is use our research techniques to combine and validate data to provide regular insight where it matters. So that's to our executives, to our leadership teams, to our professional groups, and to teams in general. So we also, in Nokia, tried to do a fair amount of work on understanding, how mature we are and what kind of value we want to deliver. Now, on the left-hand side, you'll kind of understand you'll see the familiar model. So I think many people have seen this descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, prescriptive analytics description. But we always had some issues with that one because it was built on two assumptions. The first one is that for prescriptive analytics, first of all, that it was very difficult and that everybody wants it. And then also at the lower end, the descriptive analytics, that just telling us what's going on is easy and no one wants it. I think for those of us that actually work in an organization at scale, most of your time in people analytics is probably on the latter rather than the former. So we do spend a lot of our time just simply describing the world. And when we think about prescriptive analytics, actually kind of telling people what's about to happen, that's first of all quite rare. And I think it can be applied across many different domains with different levels of accuracy. What we tried to do was define, well, how is it and what is it that we're actually providing with our stakeholders? And so for that same set of continuum, or those same axes, we decided to think of, well, we provide evidence, okay, to help decision-making at kind of the base level. We can, work on that evidence and on that data set to provide information, i.e. we can tell people a lot about what the data actually means. We can develop knowledge, i.e. we can apply our own experience and our own expertise to use that information to predict what's likely to happen. And we can offer guidance. So that's when we can combine all of the previous layers to help ensure people that they can trust us and work with us to build the future. And guidance, I think, is a far better goal to have than prescriptive analytics, because with prescriptive analytics, you're always going to find yourself, measured by reality. And the vast majority of things that occur in our world are a little bit random and very difficult to predict. Whereas if you're in the place of guidance, if you can apply, for want of a better word, wisdom through dialogue, the outcome on the other side is less acutely and granularly defined. So that's how we decided to kind of pick a target state for our maturity. Over the past 4 or 5 years, I'll go relatively quickly through this part, we underwent a very large-scale merger with Alcatel-Lucent, which left us with a very disparate technical environment. So we needed to work hard in actually kind of bringing together all of our disparate core systems, all of our disparate tools and applications, and putting those into a method of working and an engine that could deliver consistent data sources that would allow us to provide data as a service, but then also enable end user self-service from a lot of the data that we used. As we moved from that merger into the years that followed, we started to develop, first of all, independently. Then we began to combine our analysis and our analysis techniques. We then began to expand our deployments through technology. And as we got into 2020, we began to compare what we call X and O data. So O is the heavily operative data that you'll be familiar with in HRIS. X data is our experience data. So that's surveys, focus groups, qualitative interviews, and any other kind of information that gives us a feel for the how for the experience of our employees. And this was this is one of the places where our technical competence in our systems, in our computer systems understandings was really necessary. So structuring and engineering an environment that enables self-service, data as a service, and consistent data sources is something that's not, it doesn't just happen overnight. What we also did during that time is build our professional networks. So across, if you think about any company, large or small, there are standard operations that occur within a company where feedback and experiences are kind of necessary for their development and for their growth and improvement. So we worked with our colleagues in brand departments, our marketing departments, to understand what's Nokia's brand image. We worked with global sales and customer experiences to understand how do customers see us, how do customers experience working with us. We worked with legal, compliance, and ethics to understand when we get things wrong, how wrong do we go, and what does that actually look like. We worked with our colleagues in R&D to understand when we focus on improvement actions, particularly in our research and development activities, what do we like? What choices do we make? How do we prioritize and how do we focus? And across all of these areas, we were able to help our colleagues understand a little bit more about feedback and about understanding their particular role in the company, and also trade data with them. So provide them with some of the survey data and information that we had, and in return take back from them a better understanding of how the world views us as a company, not just how we view ourselves, which is often what I think employee surveys and employee experiences tend to focus on. So as we got to 2020, we had a clear goal. So we knew kind of the maturity level we wanted to get to. We had a good, solid technical development, and we had a good network. And that came just in time for our kind of first use case. So as COVID-19 hit, there was a lot of information that we had to start to collect and collate very quickly. So we used our network and our technical capabilities to compare infection rate and spreads. Our colleagues in real estate provided us with information on our site status. We also did a lot of work on understanding relative commute distances to understand the impact on working. We had to take in accounts of travel restrictions because as COVID hit, there were many employees that were stuck in parts of the world that they didn't traditionally reside. We had to relook at our planning for hiring and also our expectations for attrition. We had to look at our support service requests. So how often were people approaching our health and safety guys for things like burnout or stress? And then we also needed to set up, relatively quickly a good reactive survey about how people were coping and also how they were mitigating the effects of Corona. So we brought together people from all over our network to provide data, and we started to integrate it, specifically with the idea of informing leadership support, of assessing our current state, of communicating with employees to make sure that they felt included and that we understood the situation as it was evolving, and that we could support resource planning, provide local guidance, design and create interventions and workshops, work on contingency planning, and then update our policies accordingly as COVID reshaped the working world. So we got this, we used this kind of maturity that we've been heading towards in our network to really kind of have an impact in a number of different areas of helping our company overcome or deal with COVID. Now, one of the interesting parts about bringing together lots of data is that one of the key skills you're going to need when you're compiling data sets together is statistics, right? Because statistics is usually how we help different types of data talk to each other. And when you take the data once it's compiled and you have a good understanding of what it means, you need a great amount of, I'd say, subject matter expertise in either consultancy or in psychology to understand how can we use this data to change hearts and minds, to influence planning, to influence our reactions to our and communications to this once-in-a-lifetime event. So that's where we were at the end of, or let's say the middle of 2020, having kind of just gone through this really fast reaction space to COVID, and then we're working on, let's say, keeping our organization up to date. That put us in place for the arrival of our new CEO. So Pekka Lundmark is the CEO of Nokia. He began on August 1st, 2020. An interesting fact around that is that he was not supposed to start on August 1st. He was supposed to start later. So the request that came down to us was actually quite a lot ahead of time. So we had to work on a very accelerated schedule, because what we heard was that when Mr. Lundmark began, the first thing he wanted on his desk day one was a summary of the employee experience. So we had very little time, I think all told something like 3 to 4 weeks, to mobilize, to go and capture the data and the responses, and then also make it meaningful for a CEO when he began. We needed to pick a really simple set of questions because, funnily enough, I think if you're trying to do something big, the actual need and the ask that you want is usually quite straightforward. And so, working with colleagues in the CEO office and with the chief of staff, we came up with 3 open comment questions. So what do you like most? What do you like least about Nokia? And then what should we prioritize on day 1 to change? Relatively straightforward results. We also knew that based on CEO's profile is that Pekka and many of us have a big faith in psychological safety. So psychological safety is a massive enabler for productive work. And so what we tried to focus on in our Likert scale questions, only 4 of them, was simply those elements of psychological safety that we could use to help shape the different types of, let's say, concerns or priorities that we had on day 1. So this was things like pride in my work, being able to apply your skills fully, understanding what the atmosphere is like, and then understanding how our employees felt about the future. It seems like a simple thing when you put sort of 4 or 5 questions down on a sheet of paper, but it actually also takes quite a lot of, let's say, work and experience. So if you've been in the business of gathering feedback for quite a long time, I think you'll know that it's very easy to ask bad questions or to bring back results to questions that you can't really use. And one of the things that I think also put us in the position where we were is that we were seen across the company as being the expert voices on gathering feedback. So we took in the task and began to activate our network, launched the survey, and started to compile the results. What we got, obviously, was a great many, I think, 60, 70,000 responses to our survey. It was really well engaged, but that was a ton of text for us to start to analyze. So we deployed what we called a dual-lexicon approach, which I think is not common. I think it may be kind of unique to us. We may have to start to patent it. But basically, for those of you that are interested in the technical side, this is the stream work from NIME that helped us enable the machine learning engine that would analyze and assess our results. We compiled a lexicon. So we built a dictionary. We enabled this system, this tool, to read the comments and assess them against the dictionary. We began to tag each comment with our attributes. We had to wrangle through that because our tagging is almost never complete. So we have to take out things like join words or try to manipulate areas where we have consistent misunderstandings with, let's say, corporate terminology. We validated the data repeatedly, and this was a little bit where we began to teach the program itself where it was getting assessments and taggings incorrectly and where it should rework its assessment. Then we began to, once they were categorized correctly, score the comments based on sentiment and polarity. So sentiment is how positive or negative the comment was. Polarity is inside one comment, are there divergent or consistent types of sentiment? So is it like a happy and sad, or is it just a neutral score? And then the last part was simply rendering the visualizations around which we could start to summarize the tool. So this is what we call the bottom-up lexicon approach. It's very standard. I think many of you will be familiar, at least with the process steps of conducting text analysis. The dual lexicon approach that we deployed, though, had another layer to it. So we also applied a top-down approach. So previously we'd done this bottom-up work before, but in a different part of the company. We'd actually done this for our customer surveys. So what we decided to do was, making some small tweaks and adjustments to an existing lexicon, we assessed the comments using a second lexicon approach. So the customer lexicon. That basically produced what we called a double tag effect. But what it meant is that each comment was tagged from the employees' perspectives and also with customer perspectives. I'll show you what we mean. So in that comment here that we highlight, we face massive delays in the next releases for a simple reason of taking ourselves to test processes too complicated. These aren't real comments, by the way. These were generated. What we can see is the employee's concern, so the test process being too complicated and time-consuming, and the potential impact that we get to the customer, i.e. delays. This took a fair amount of statistical work between the two, because the next step was to assess to what extent do these two data sets correlate with each other. Because what we need to know is that as we apply the customer and the employee view, that we have a consistency in our understanding. There can be, small outliers and differentiators, but we do need to ensure that there's a consistent evaluation, because that's when we can legitimately say, if we have this consistency, legitimately say that, okay, what our customers are seeing, what our employees are seeing are the same thing. Now, the good news is when we ran our assessments and our tests, we found that the correlation between the comments and the stratification was very consistent. So we had an R-squared of 0.69 that told us that basically we were talking about the same thing through our dual-lexicon approach. What we then found out is that as a company, we tend to deliver with quality. We're present when customers need us to be, and we are reliable. So people can depend on us. But we aren't always clear on the resource needs and what's about to happen next. So sometimes we have the capacity to frustrate our employees. So at a high level, this was our kind of initial readout. But for our executives, oh, yes, this also takes a great deal of, this is the statistical work, I would say, in play. There you go. But for our executives, this is kind of what we came out with in the end, right? Which was a categorized list of our top priorities from our employees and the top areas where our customers were likely to be impacted, whether that be based on the products themselves, the quality of the products, the time it takes to get to them, or the time it takes to serve them, the cost, or then the relationship between Nokia and the customer itself. And for our leadership teams, in this level of granularity, what we were then able to do was enable a selection. So when executives were presented with this summary, they were able to click in the boxes and then get access to the comments themselves that told them the specifics of each of the of those areas. So if the question was, how does leadership impact price, or how do tools impact our time, they would be able to drill down to the specifics of the comment to understand what was beneath those concerns. So we were able to help, first of all, shape our employee and customer comms, right? So we were able to talk to our employees and our customers with a better understanding of kind of who we were and how we were seen in the world. This was a really important part. We were able to highlight many areas where we needed to renew our processes. So as soon as you can make the connection between what your employees can see and what your customers can see, the thing that sits in between those two is usually how we process our our to-market strategy. And so we had a number of core processes that we need to start to renew. And also we took a look at our organizational design, because many of the challenges that we uncovered were not built, let's say, in our professions. So it wasn't that we weren't sort of technically competent or we weren't capable. It was based on how we had decided to organize our groups and how they were working together. So we used this readout to help inform our comms, our renewals, and the way we looked at ourselves as an organization. Okay. From there, in a short clip, we went to enabling change. So this it's relatively straightforward. We continue to do deep dives with our leaders and with our core process owners, and then we started to do workshops, co-creative workshops, where we built on some of the frustrations that we'd uncovered and also some of the positive elements that we've covered and that we'd picked up, to try and help our employees involve themselves in the, let's say, regeneration of Nokia, the company. Our timeline was relatively tight. So we started with that big presentation on August 1st. Day one, we did get everything in hand when it was supposed to be. We started to cascade those results to senior LTs about a month later. 2 weeks later, we started the process and strategy reviews. And about 6 weeks after that, we shared our conclusions and our review date. After that, we went into December having renewed our strategy and our operating model. And then as we got to this end of the first quarter this year, we were able to explain that to the market, so to our investors and to our customers, about what were the changes we're going through, why we were going through them, and what was the role of both our employee feedback and our customer feedback in making all this happen. What we delivered was a common platform for core systems. We used modeling and processing tools to integrate data outside of our normal architecture. So whenever we didn't have it inside our core architecture, we were able to use tools like our text analyzer there to program augmented data that would sit on top of it. And we ran scripts and programs in specialist tools to deliver analyses. We profiled all the data with significance and data quality. We ran non-parametric regression and decision trees to determine relativity between topics. And then we just ran basic Pearson coefficients to determine content similarity and refined our categorical assessments. So we just checked correlation and covariance. Lastly, we designed our qualitative data capture in line with our academic best practices. We rendered our analysis that was digestible for multiple levels of our organization, and we facilitated leadership teams in interpreting the analyses and offered guidance. In short, we used our computer skills, our statistical skills, and our subject matter expertise to deliver the start of a change for our entire company. So this is where we end. The role of people analytics when onboarding as CEO, at least for us, our role was to use the network to bring together vantage points on people topics from across the organization and beyond, to provide an inside-out view to map the key relationships with data and evidence, and to facilitate a deep examination to render guidance that will be easily adopted by our populations at large. Okay, thanks for your time today. As a strange technical quip, I have to stop sharing my presentation so that I can see the comments. So let me check. Okay. Oof, there's a lot. Okay, so. Oh, was I blocking text? Oh no. Okay. So I'm trying to find some questions through the comments, but I don't see any. Are we still, Saranda, are we still live? Oh, I am alive. Okay. Who drove the process on combining employee survey with customer survey? Any challenges on this? Okay, yes. Yeah, so that was, I worked on that with, I learned a great deal. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So yeah, on the process for combining customer and employee data was driven by us. So when we thought about the CEO and what he was likely to come into, day one, we thought it'd be good to put the employee perspective in context of what the market was also showing us. How do you ensure high participation rate in survey and so many comments? Participation rates are pretty easy to ensure if you have something like the CEO as the target state. So having the CEO, the name attached, does get you a lot of buy-in. But I think also keeping the questions simple and easy to understand, is one. It's a difficult thing to get right, but if you get it right, then I think it's. But if you get it right, then I think it helps people really kind of give their opinions and their feelings with authenticity. What survey capability do we have? So we actually use Qualtrics, which is an American company. We've been using them for 5 or 6 years, and they're very good and flexible. They allow us to do a great deal. We do augment that, I think, sometimes with MS Forms and some of the freeware versions. But for the technical depth of what we do, we used Qualtrics. Yes, thank you, Andreas. It's extremely nice for you to see. Yes, it was good. It was good that we structured it in the way that we did. Yes. So how did we map the customer and employee perceptions? So yeah, there was one work that was done on topical, so we were able to go across categories and topics to see which customers and which employee teams were referenced. So we actually used the comment as the connector. In other cases, we used demographics, so account teams, locations, and organizational settings. So what are the common elements or common themes per group, I would say, or per cohort, between the customer and the employee experience. If there aren't other questions, then I guess I can say thank you very much for your time, for being active on the chat with me, and for putting up with my lack of technical skills in the tool. I hope you all have a great rest of the summit. Speak to you again.